I want to throw you to a map. You know, we've shown you a map, a couple different maps of the Middle East. I saw this one this morning. Ben Shapiro tweeted this one out. Just again, showing you the scale of what we are talking about. We are talking about a tiny country. That red box you're looking at there, the box is probably 4 times the size of what Israel actually is. It's the little speck in the box, but you can't even make a box small enough. But only if that country was a little bit smaller, we would have peace. That seems to be the argument, and I think most people realize it isn't. But Khomeini's not the only one internationally saying crazy things. This is a tweet from Turkey's Deputy Minister of National Education. He said, "One day they will shoot you too, you will die." That seems like a direct threat to Bibi Netanyahu. And then now just a little bit more catching up, and then we'll bring on the ambassador. This is from the AP. Now the outbreak of the war between Israel and the Palestinians after a devastating Hamas attack on Israeli soil is threatening to delay or derail the years-long country-by-country diplomatic push by the United States to improve relations between Israel and its Arab neighbors. The so-called normalization push, which began under former President Donald Trump's administration and was branded as the Abraham Accords, is an ambitious effort to reshape the region and boost Israel's standing in historic ways. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the Hamas attacks may have been driven in part by a desire to scuttle the United States' most ambitious part of the initiative, the sealing of diplomatic relations between rivals Israel and Saudi Arabia. The Middle East's 2 great powers share a common enemy in Iran, a generous military and financial sponsor of Hamas. However, social media showed crowds take to the streets with Palestinian flags in Lebanon, Bahrain, Kuwait, and elsewhere in the hours after the Hamas attack. A policeman in Egypt's coastal city of Alexandria opened fire on Israeli tourists, killing 2 Israelis and 1 Egyptian. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry in a statement soon after the attacks did not condemn Hamas. Instead, the ministry noted that it had repeatedly warned that Israel's occupation, the deprivation of the Palestinian people of their legitimate rights, and the repetition of systemic provocations led to this moment. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby declined to comment on the Saudi response. And with no further ado, having caught you up on some of that, and Ambassador, I seriously hope that I'm doing justice to all of the things that you have been fighting for. I welcome my friend, former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, to the show. Ambassador, how are you?
Dave, I'm fine. I've been better, but I'm fine. And I wish I could say the same thing for so many people in Israel who are not fine. I mean, a lot of them are not fine, and you know why. We don't need to go through all the parade of horrors that we've seen over the last few days, but we're really not fine. It is a day of Holocaust. It's not the Holocaust in its scope, but that day of October 7th was a day that the Jewish people experienced during the Holocaust, and it's a day that we never thought we'd see again. And so the people of Israel are in pain, but they're also incredibly united, incredibly determined, incredibly angry, and they are going to respond, I think, like never before.
Well, actually, on that note, if you don't mind, Ambassador, you posted a video of young Israelis who are returning to Israel at this very moment to defend their country and their people and their families. I'd like to throw to that real quick, because maybe that'll give us a little more of a positive note to start on.
היי, אני מאיה, זה יובל, אנחנו ממייסדים מחזירים הביתה.
אנחנו כרגע טיסה בדרך מפרו לישראל, בדרך אליכם להגיע למלחמה. אוהבים אתכם, עם ישראל חי!
Ambassador, that spirit, young people returning home to defend their families, maybe Hamas has awoken something that needed to be awoken in some bizarre spiritual sense?
They have. I mean, these are young Israelis on vacation in various parts in the world. They were collected, from whatever their meeting point was, and they're not complaining about having their vacations cut short. They're coming. They're joining their brothers in Israel and brothers and sisters in Israel. They're on this plane. They're singing Am Yisrael Chai, which means the nation of Israel lives. And by the way, that's emblematic of the entire country. I mean, what I'm seeing in Israel, apart from the pain, and the pain is real. But those who are not mourning today, or at least not mourning directly for an immediate member of their family, those who don't have someone who's being held hostage, and unfortunately, those are hundreds of people. But the people, the rest of the country, they are determined. They are rushing. They're tripping over each other to get into battle, to get to the front lines. The people who are not in the army anymore, people like me who are too old to serve in the army, doing acts of kindness, raising money, philanthropy, putting up people who are displaced from the north or the south because they had to move out of their homes or their homes were destroyed. People are, they're just welcoming everybody into their homes. I mean, this country unfortunately knows how to deal with the tragedy, and they're up to the task.
I have to say, Ambassador, when I saw you 6 months ago, it was the first time we ever met, and I interviewed you, and you said, hey, you want to take a walk around Jerusalem? And we had lunch, and we walked around, and I said to you many times, the thing that I could not believe, and having been to Israel several times before, I could not believe how peaceful it was and how safe it was. And it's so personally, I mean, the tragedy is just beyond imagination, but I really thought that the next time I was going to have you on, if you would have asked me last week, was going to be in a few weeks from now to explain that this deal with Saudi Arabia and Israel had been signed. And here we are. But can you just talk a little bit about the peaceful nature that actually is in Israel for just a moment? I mean, again, we can talk about the horrors all the time, but something incredible has been brewing there, and that's what's being frayed right now.
Look, the one thing about the people of Israel, and I wish we had this now in America, but there are foundational principles and foundational experiences and commonality that, notwithstanding the politics here, which, as you know, is all over the place and very robust, people get very upset and angry and about that. But when it comes down to it, it's a family. The people here are a family. Many of them are children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors who came here as their only place of refuge. And they understand. I mean, there's an expression in Hebrew, Ein lanu eretz acheret, we have no other land. And that's their view. That's really the motivating principle here. There's no place to go. This is the last stop. This is where the Jewish people take their stand, and they stand for their home, they stand for their family, they stand for their neighbors. And that's something that I don't know that any other country has. It's a sense of unity and camaraderie and brotherhood and sisterhood that I don't think we have anymore in America, regrettably, but it's still here. And that's what contributes to the stability almost all the time until something like this happens. And then we realize something very painful, which is that, we had thought that the Holocaust was, as it relates to the war against the Jews was the war to end all wars. And I think we didn't really believe it, but we kind of felt that way and optimistically felt that maybe the Jewish people after 2,000 years are going to finally be allowed to live in this land, this God-given land, this only Jewish state in the whole world, this little, as you point out on the map, little tiny speck of dust on the globe. We thought we could live here in peace, but we still can't. We still can't. And when I say, Dave, to people when they ask me, to describe this moment, I call it a never again moment. The phrase never again is used by everybody of all stripes, when it comes to the Holocaust. Never again. We use that word, those words. They're wonderful words. They convey a real meaning. But now we're going to find out, are these just words?
Yeah.
Or is there really something to it? Because now is really where the rubber hits the road on this issue. This wasn't a terrorist attack. This wasn't a battle. This was a day of Holocaust. This was the soldiers who came here, these hardened, battle-tested soldiers, when they finally exposed these places, it was almost like, if you remember Eisenhower, when he and his troops came into the concentration camps after the end of World War II. They couldn't. These are tough people. These are really tough people. They couldn't contain. They were throwing up. They couldn't contain they were crying. They couldn't believe that human beings could be so cruel and barbaric to each other. And that's what the reaction that the Israeli soldiers, diplomats, even the press. I mean, everybody that went and visited yesterday, there was an open day of press to come and look. Nobody left there unchanged. I mean, nobody. And so this is the time to find out who we really are. Are we going to stand with Israel so that they can defeat and eradicate this evil? Or are we going to start kind of micromanaging and getting politically correct and thinking about, well, 1,200 people were murdered. Should Israel be able to kill twice that many? I mean, that's the way the world has traditionally thought. And we got to get completely out of that paradigm and say this is a war for the existence of the Jewish state. It's probably a war for the existence of the Jewish people, because if we lose this, who knows where this leads? And we have to win this fight.
How much of this do you think is because the West does not know how to stand up for itself? It doesn't know its own history. I mean, some of the things that I see on Twitter and even, MSNBC, which is almost a Hamas network at this point, the absolute lies of the history, all these people saying an occupation began 75 years ago. It's really bizarre to have a bunch of Palestinian people on MSNBC apparently calling for the British Empire to come back or bring back the Ottomans before that, or the idea that the Jews, everyone knows that Jews celebrate Hanukkah in Judea and Samaria, like all of the things that I keep repeating ad nauseum that of course, that the West didn't know how to explain its history. And I would directly link that to a problem we have in the United States, where we have half the people thinking that our foundation was fundamentally based in racism and not in the individual rights and freedom and a nation for all people and all that. That we've just lost it, maybe out of it's a function of our success, I suppose. And that might stand, you might be able to say that for Israel, and you might be able to say that for the United States.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we have lost our way. And I think we've lost our way. We've also lost some basic facts, which, for the benefit of your audience, if I could just point out the fact, people refer to Gaza as the most densely populated place in the world. It's an open air prison. Gaza is 142 square miles, right? Manhattan Island is 1/7 of that. It's about 24 square miles, right? So Manhattan Island, where 8 million people either live there or come to work there every day, is 1/7 the size of Gaza, right? So, just in terms of understanding the density. Now, where is Gaza, right? It's not landlocked. Gaza has along its border a strip of the Mediterranean that is the most beautiful beach in the world. It's the same beach as you would have in Tel Aviv. We all know how beautiful the beaches are in Tel Aviv. So the Gaza has the potential to be a place of tourism, to be a place of commerce. It's got I can tell you, I used to go there when I was a kid in the 80s and the 70s. It's a beautiful place. It was beautiful beachfront. People used to come there all the time. And why is it a place today where you wouldn't want to live or I wouldn't want to live? By the way, it's a place where corrupt Palestinians want to live because there's some mansions there on the water that are spectacular. But why would I want to live there? Well, if there's someone to blame, okay, it's not Israel. It's Hamas. Hamas has destroyed commerce. Hamas has destroyed, freedom of speech. Hamas has destroyed freedom of religion. Hamas takes people who are accused of being gay, brings them up to the top of a building and throws them off. Hamas is subjugating women. Hamas is destroying any opportunity for engagement with the rest of the world. And primarily, Hamas refuses to accept the state of Israel and has as part of its charter a mandate to kill the Jewish people. So you ask yourself, well, why aren't the people there, why aren't they enjoying some of the economy that the Israelis enjoy? Why aren't they participating, in tourism that Israel, because of Hamas, because Hamas doesn't permit it. And so, all these people that are bemoaning the fate of the Gazans in the Gazan Palestinians, let me tell you, when Hamas is defeated, they're going to be liberated. Okay, so all the people that want to help them, if they want to help them at all, they should help Israel in this war to defeat the single source that's keeping the Gazans down, keeping them from achieving their aspirations. So, the facts are just completely upside down in terms of, you'd think in a university and, we're watching, places like Harvard and Columbia, where I went to school, and NYU Law School, where I got my law degree. The student organizations are coming out and think of what they're saying. They're saying that a woman who was raped, a woman who was murdered while she was pregnant and had her stomach sliced open so that the fetus could be pulled out and decapitated, that these people had it coming. They had it coming because they live in Israel, which is an apartheid state. That's what these people are saying at Harvard, at Columbia, at the best schools. It's an indication that somehow SAT scores are inversely proportional to intelligence, right? I mean, it's unbelievable that people that presumably, have some cerebral matter can't get this, can't even open up a book and get the facts right so they can make the right decisions. And, It's massively frustrating, but you know what? I don't care because we're going to win this war, whether people like it, whether they don't, whether Harvard thinks it's a good idea or a bad idea. We're going to win this war. The Jewish people, okay? I don't care whether you're left wing, right wing, center. If you care about Jewish survival, you have to support Israel in winning this war.
Yeah, and if I could just add one thing to that, I can't say anything better than you just said, but it's not just, you don't even have to care about the Jews specifically. If you care about Western civilization, this is it. We're seeing it. It's not that surprising that a bunch of people that don't know if boys are girls also don't know if the people beheading babies are the bad guys. I want to throw the map up for just another second, because could you, from a geopolitical and from a geographic perspective, explain this situation with Egypt and Sinai. Now, most people, I mean, you don't hear this on MSNBC, but Gaza was in control by Egypt before 1967, and then they lost it after attacking Israel. But everyone can see that map right there, and there is a border with Egypt. That's Sinai specifically that they're bordering with. Basically, nobody lives in Sinai, and if the Egyptians or the Jordanians or the Syrians, et cetera, if any of these people actually cared about the Palestinians, wouldn't everybody be saying, boy, you got to get away from those crazy Jews? How about you just walk over the border there? But Egypt has completely bombarded the border.
Yeah, I mean, look, nobody wants them. And not only does nobody want them, but they are intentionally, I believe, certainly by Hamas, certainly by the radical Islamists, they are intentionally kept suppressed so that they remain angry at Israel. I mean, this is a terrorist farm, right? This is where terrorists are taught to be angry and to hate Israel. I'll give you an example. We cut off funding to an organization called UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Works Agency. It's a refugee agency. It's the only refugee agency in the world that's earmarked specifically to Palestinians, right? Every other refugee agency just deals with refugees. This particular agency, for no particular reason, is focused only on Palestinians. And we.
And if I may, don't they also do it for? It's not just people that were displaced, let's say, in the war in 1948. It's for all of their children and grandchildren and everything else, which doesn't apply to any other people on the face of the planet. Correct?
Their definition of refugees would extend to a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, who happens to be of Palestinian origin. So yeah, it's absurd. But understand what they do. I mean, in these schools in Gaza, and I, you can find these on the internet. These schools put on plays, right? And they dress up. Let's say in a fourth grade play, they'll dress up half the kids as terrorists, with fake machine guns. I assume fake, maybe just unloaded, and then they'll dress up the other half the kids as Jews. Jews. They'll put them on big noses. They'll put them on yellow stars. Whatever. They'll make clear that these are Jews. And then the terrorists, in the play, they kill all the Jews. The Jews all fall down. They act like they're dead, and the parents get up and applaud. Right? That's what UNRWA does. I mean, they've made no effort whatsoever to in any way teach coexistence with the Israelis who are along their border. So one of the problems is is as in almost every situation is who's funding all this, right? And we didn't fund it. Like we cut off UNRWA completely. We cut off almost the entire aid to the Palestinian Authority. Why? Because they have a system where they pay terrorists to kill Jews. The more Jews you kill, the more money you get. So he said, well, if that's what you're using your money for, God forbid the American people, the American taxpayers should be funding that. So we cut that off. And of course, we cut off funding to Iran, which really is the head of the snake, is really coordinating all of this. I mean, there's no way this attack could have been possibly achieved without the financing and the training, I believe the cyber attack capabilities, the organization and the approval of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so, what are we doing with Iran? People are debating. I'm watching this debate. I find it so amusing whether or not the $6 billion that America gave to Iran as part of the prisoner swap, they're debating whether or not that money was actually used or spent on this attack. As if it matters, as if it matters. And of course, and it's not just, of course, money is fungible. You pointed that out as well. But it's even worse than that, because this problem existed long before this particular prisoner swap. I'll just, I just want to make sure, here are some numbers that you should just understand. In the Iran's revenues from the export of crude oil and condensate reached $42.6 billion, right, in 2022. In 2021, the number was $25.5 billion. And in 2020, right, our last year, it was $7.9 billion. So that's almost a six-fold increase in Iran's oil revenues since the end of the Trump administration. Now, who cares about the 6 billion, that's in escrow in Qatar? They have become incredibly rich. We have taken, the pressure off. We have lifted sanctions, and this is what you get. I mean, this is what you get. We've created a financial pathway, a lubricant, if you will, to all the malign activity in the Middle East and elsewhere. And it's not just the Middle East. I mean, we have an open border, right? We have no idea who's in our country right now. No idea. And I sure hope it's not any of these people, but that would just be an optimistic speculation. I mean, there's no reason to think that there aren't, lots of people in America right now who are being funded by Iran. So it's a problem for America. It's a problem for Israel. It's a problem, as you point out, it's a problem for the free world. It's a problem for the West. It's a problem for any liberal democracy, anyone who values freedom and opportunity. And this is the tip of the spear. And this is where we find out, whether or not, Western values are going to prevail, or whether we're going to be in a quagmire with the worst of the worst.
What do you think America should be doing right now?
So I think, look, I think that what I'd like them to do, which they won't do, I don't believe, is to do an about face on Iran. I mean, it's hard to admit mistakes, and politicians almost never do that. The guy I used to work for didn't like to do it either, so I'm not going to pick on Biden. But it's a huge mistake, and it's being proven to be a huge mistake, just like the border has been proven, the open border has been proven to be a huge mistake. They got to get tougher on Iran. I think they ought to go to the Qataris. It may only be a symbolic gesture, but what I would say to the Qataris is freeze that money or give it back to us. You got to understand something. At the same time, the very same time that the United States and Iran are negotiating this 5-for-5 prisoner swap with a $6 billion sweetener, at the same time, Hamas and Iran are planning this attack. And $6 billion, according to the Americans, was a token of good faith. I mean, which boggles my mind. As between America and Iran, it's America that has to show its good faith. But in any event, we got duped. I mean, I sure hope I'm right about this. I assume that if America knew at the time it was negotiating this prisoner swap, that Hamas and Iran were negotiating this assault against the Jewish people, this barbaric attack reminiscent of the Holocaust, I would hope that America would not have gone through with this deal. And assuming that's the case, and I sure hope it's true, they ought to look the Iranians in the eye and say, you cheated us, you duped us, give us back the money. We're not going to honor this deal. We're not going to take back, we can't take back the prisoners because you have them ready, but we're not sure as hell not giving you the money. And I hope they do that. Now, on another front, I'm going to say I think that moving the Gerald Ford, which is the largest aircraft carrier in the world, moving that into the East Mediterranean, and I think Biden's speech last night was helpful. I mean, if it keeps Lebanon out of the war, and I'm not sure that's going to happen, but if it does keep Lebanon out of the war because of the threats made by America, I'm going to give credit to Biden for doing that. It could save lives. But we got here. The reason we got here is because of the American weakness over the last 3 years. I have no doubt.
I know we could do this all day, but you have, I am sure, plenty of things to do. Just two more questions for you. Can you just describe it? Because I think most people watching this and I think most Americans, except for a small crazy minority, accept that if Donald Trump was still president, that this would not have happened. But can you describe what it was like when you were doing the Abraham Accords, talking to the Arab counterparts and doing these deals that no one said could ever be done? Could you talk about what it was like to have strong American leadership and why they did it, and sort of why, when you have weak American leadership, they won't do this? And it seems like the Saudi Arabia thing is now, it's probably kicked down the can 10 years or something.
Well, if these countries, whether it was UAE or Bahrain or Morocco and Saudi as well, had enormous respect for President Trump because number one, he kept his word when he said he was going to do things. Number two, all these countries, Israel included, have roughly the same enemies, which are, radical Islamic terrorists. Every one of these countries faces radical Islamic terrorists. And Donald Trump, in 2017, he goes to Saudi Arabia and he speaks to 50 Arab countries and says, look, you know what? We're all facing the same enemy, but I don't want to start dealing with them when they cross the Atlantic. It's your job to stop these animals before they come my way. And if you do, you'll find the United States to be one of your best friends. And I think that changed the entire paradigm. When Trump took out Qasem Soleimani, who is the the head terrorist among the country that is the biggest state sponsor of terrorists, changed the dynamic. People looked and said, "Wow, wow, look what this guy did. This guy was willing to directly, to take out the most popular leader in Iran, to send a message that we will not allow him to proceed with plans that he had underfoot to kill Americans." So that strength is what people are looking for. It's not what you say; it's what you do. And I think in Trump, all these countries, Israel as well, saw a reliable partner that was, it's easy to have a partner when everything's great, like you got a business partner, you're making tons of money, everybody's friendly. The question is, what kind of a partner do you want when you're in the trenches? When things are tough, when you have to fight and you have to survive and you have to prevail, who's the partner you want? And all these people would much rather have Trump than Biden, because Trump is a guy that will fight, and he's not afraid.
I have one more question for you, because I'm seeing a lot of people that seemingly want to fall on the sword. There's no win for Israel here, no matter what they do, and you can't win this war and all these things. What does a win for Israel now look like to you?
Look, I think, in my mind, and I'm not a military strategist or an expert, but in my mind, I look at this. I look at Hamas as if they're Nazis or ISIS, or in that category. And look, in 1945, America and its allies defeated the Nazis, and we occupied Germany. None of the countries there wanted to hold Germany, but we occupied it for a while. We cleaned it out, and then we turned it over to people that we thought we could trust to build a nation. We helped them, and look where we are today. We've got great relations, of course, with Germany and Japan. That, to me, is sort of my model. I mean, we have to clean it out. Okay, and we have to liberate Gaza for the benefit of the people that live there. When Hamas is dead and gone, I think I think Israel will reach out to its neighbors, will reach out to America, to the UN, to try to create a caretaker military occupation for as long as is necessary, to turn it over to people that want to keep the border quiet. All Israel wants is a quiet border. Doesn't want 1 inch of Gaza. There's not a single Jew living in Gaza. There's not a single military presence in Gaza. All Israel wants is a quiet border. Once they're sure they can get that, they'll leave, and then that will be the victory.
Ambassador, I'm honored that you took some time on obviously a very difficult time. You are welcome back anytime. You have our thoughts and prayers, and we will do this in the promised land one way or another, either in the promised land where you are or the other promised land of Florida where you part-time live. I will see you soon, I hope.
God bless you, Dave.